On this Monday night, Afghanistan marks a dark anniversary. 1 year of the Taliban's rule. One family's bittersweet journey to Canada and the push for Ottawa to pick up the pace helping refugees. On high alert.
We could be in for a really chaotic and dangerous time.
The rising threats against the FBI, preparing for battle. The recruits getting ready to take on Russian forces, and quest for a cure.
All we're trying to do is give them just a better life.
One family's multi-million-dollar fundraiser for their son, and others with a very rare disease.
Global National with Donna Friesen. Reporting tonight, Farah Nasser.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us. 1 year ago today was a dark day for the people of Afghanistan. The Taliban entered Kabul, capturing Afghanistan's capital and wiping out 2 decades of significant gains in democracy, human rights, and education. In the past 12 months, the economy has collapsed. Hunger is rampant. And under the cover of burqas, women's freedom has vanished. Today in Kabul, Taliban fighters celebrated, chanting victory slogans outside the now closed U.S. Embassy. They have declared August 15th a national holiday. But there are still brave scenes of resistance. Over the weekend, dozens of Afghan women took to Kabul's streets demanding the right to work, study, and participate in society. Taliban fighters quickly broke up the protest by firing their guns into the air, putting an end to the first women's protest in months. After a year of governing, the Taliban has yet to be recognized by a single country in the world. Western governments have been scrambling to evacuate their own citizens and help those who help them. Canada has fallen far short of its plan to resettle 40,000 Afghans. Thousands are still trapped in Afghanistan, and those who have arrived are still haunted by their difficult and painful journey. Jeff Semple has our top story tonight.
The Ahmadi family's arrival to Canada is bittersweet. The father, Bashir, used to work for the Canadian forces in Afghanistan. When the Taliban retook control of the country 1 year ago, he and his family went into hiding. They spent months trying to escape. They finally made it here to Edmonton last spring, but without one of their children. I'm happy that my family is here, Bashir says, but I also feel anxious. I feel crazy because I lost my daughter. Last December, Bashir's family had received approval to go to Canada as refugees, but with no rescue flights, they first needed passports to get themselves to Pakistan. One night, while waiting for their applications to be approved, the family drove through a Taliban checkpoint in Kandahar, and the guards started firing at their vehicle. Bashir's 10-year-old daughter, Nasifa, was shot in the head.
My whole family was there and they were shocked.
Nasifa's uncle was driving behind them in a second car. He says the vehicle was so riddled with bullets, a fire broke out. The Taliban guards refused to help him pull his family members from the burning wreckage.
I shouted at them, "What are you waiting for?" They were just glancing on them, but they didn't help me.
Their aunt, seated next to Nasifa, also died. 2 other family members were injured. Bashir says he'd previously received a warning letter from the Taliban accusing him of being a Western spy. He believes his family was targeted because he'd worked for the Canadians. When we first spoke to Bashir and broke the news of Nasifa's death last year, it sparked a national outcry and a pledge from the immigration minister to do more to help. But 1 year since Ottawa promised to bring 40,000 Afghan refugees to Canada, around 17,000, or fewer than half, have arrived, a significantly slower pace than refugees arriving from Syria in 2015 or Ukraine today.
This particular refugee resettlement initiative is easily the most challenging that we could imagine in Canada.
The immigration minister blames the Taliban for the delays getting refugees out of the country. But Nasifa's family is calling on Ottawa to move faster. Some of their family and friends are still waiting for their applications to be processed.
Yeah, I request the government of Canada as soon as possible because, and as we danger our life for the government of Canada, they should also evacuate and our family too.
Since arriving in Canada 4 months ago, Bashir's wife gave birth to a son. They called him Mohammed Siraj, which means light, a symbol of hope for the future and the darkness they left behind. Jeff Semple, Global News.
As you heard in Jeff's story, while the Canadian government blames the Taliban for delays in getting refugees to safety, opposition leaders blame the Liberals for not doing enough. Global News circled back with the minister in charge for more details on Canada's response as thousands of Afghans wait in dangerous limbo. Tom Vernon reports.
It is the story of thousands of Afghan citizens, women and men who stepped up to help Canadian forces during a time of war.
I have the honor and privilege to serve for the Canadian Army.
This man, who needs to keep his identity secret, served as an interpreter for the Canadian Army, even earning a commendation and promotion. 1 year ago, his life changed dramatically. Kabul fell to the Taliban. Canada quickly evacuated its embassy staff, leaving behind those who supported our efforts with promises of bringing them to Canada soon. For this veteran, who has since fled to Pakistan, that promise is still unfulfilled.
After sending numerous emails, up to now, I have only received an automated reply.
Instead of expeditious processing, the application process is opaque, confusing, and marred in bureaucratic red tape.
NDP MP Jenny Kwan says Canada's evacuation response has been unacceptable and is demanding the government expand the program, reduce documentation requirements, and allow refugees to complete their paperwork after they've landed safely in Canada.
They are real people, all with an enduring relationship with Canada, and feel abandoned by the Canadian government.
The Conservatives agree, calling the Liberal response shameful.
This Liberal government was saying that we'll do everything we can to get them out, but their actions are speaking louder than that.
I'm the kind of person who will always want to do more, to go faster.
The minister in charge says he's always willing to listen to ways to improve the program, but he says the biggest obstacle isn't the paperwork, but safe passage out of Afghanistan.
In the past 12 months, to have resettled 17,300 Afghan refugees in Canada, by global standards, it's amongst the most anyone could hope to.
This interpreter still waits, fearing for his life and the lives of his family he was forced to leave behind.
This is the matter of life and death. I need an immediate intervention to evacuate me and my family and give me a chance to live and serve in Canada with dignity and pride.
Tom Vernon, Global News, Edmonton.
It has been 1 week since a search warrant was executed at Donald Trump's Florida home, and the rhetoric from supporters of former President Trump keeps ramping up. While Republicans have long described themselves as the party of law and order, many Trump supporters, including those in Congress, are now taking aim at the country's top law enforcement agency. The FBI has reported an increase in threats and even calls for an armed rebellion and civil war. Jackson Proskow reports.
Security is visibly tighter at FBI offices after a weekend intelligence bulletin warned of an increase in threats to federal law enforcement officers and even their families, including threats of a dirty bomb outside FBI headquarters and general calls for civil war and armed rebellion.
As soon as the news broke about the FBI search of Mar-a-Lago, there was a tidal wave of anger and animus that came from radical supporters of President Trump.
Donald Trump's possession of top-secret documents has led the Justice Department to probe possible violations of the Espionage Act and obstruction of justice. On Monday, Trump claimed the FBI even took his passports in the search. All the while, the former president and his allies have kept up their verbal attacks on the FBI, some naming agents and even the judge who authorized the search warrant.
The FBI has been acting like a bunch of thugs. I don't know if they're direct or they're just doing it on their own.
Who is to say in this kind of case that some of the documents supposedly seized were not planted there to begin with?
Over the weekend, Trump supporters rallied outside local FBI offices.
The FBI has been specifically targeting conservatives in this country.
Last week's attack on an FBI office in Cincinnati was carried out by a Trump supporter, armed with a nail gun and an AR-15 style rifle. He posted extensively on Trump's Truth Social site.
If a small swath of Republicans take it seriously and follow through, turning their violent threats into violent action, we could be in for a really chaotic and dangerous time.
Trump told Fox News he's willing to help bring down the temperature because of what he called tremendous anger in the country, yet there's little sign of what steps he might take to make that happen, at a time when multiple investigations could deliver serious consequences.
What makes the current threats so difficult to confront is that they're not concentrated around a single date or event like we saw with January 6th. But each day closer to November's midterms and each new revelation in the Trump investigations seems to heighten the risks. Farah?
Jackson Proskow in Washington. Thank you, Jackson. And Rudy Giuliani, Donald Trump's former personal attorney, has now been told he is the target of a criminal investigation into his efforts to overturn the 2020 election. Prosecutors in Georgia say the former New York mayor has become a focus of their election interference investigation. And Giuliani is scheduled to testify before a special grand jury in Atlanta later this week. Following the election, Giuliani repeatedly claimed electronic voting systems in the state were misused to alter ballots, and more than 60,000 ineligible votes were cast. Those claims were debunked by multiple investigations. The UK has taken a major step in fighting COVID-19. It is now the first country to approve a vaccine designed to target both the original virus and the more transmissible Omicron variant. The country's medicine regulator approved Moderna's new bivalent vaccine for booster shots, citing clinical trial data showing a strong immune response against both virus variants. The agency also says it is still providing good protection against Omicron's BA4 and BA5 subvariants. There are no details yet on when those doses will be publicly available. A major change in Canadian media. CTV is parting ways with lead national anchor and senior editor Lisa Laflamme.
While it is crushing to be leaving CTV National News in a manner that is not my choice, please know reporting to you has truly been the greatest honor of my life.
Laflamme broke the news herself on social media, saying she was blindsided, shocked and saddened by the move. In a statement, CTV calls it a business decision made due to changing viewer habits. Laflamme was appointed CTV's national anchor in 2010 after decades of reporting from all over the globe. CTV has named Omar Sachedina as Laflamme's replacement. It's a critical education on combat. Coming up, the Ukrainian civilians learning to become soldiers. An angered China staged fresh new military drills near Taiwan today. This in response to another sudden visit from U.S. lawmakers to the island Beijing claims as its own. Chinese forces carried out more air and sea combat exercises in the region, with their defense ministry adding in a statement they will crush any form of Taiwan independence, separatism, or foreign interference. This comes just days after China concluded aggressive drills over U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's earlier high-profile visit. Meanwhile, this latest congressional delegation met with Taiwan's president and senior officials to discuss security obligations and trade issues before leaving the country earlier today. The Ukrainian military is battling hard, but the grinding war is taking a toll on its forces. And now Canadian troops have arrived in the UK to help train thousands of volunteers to fight Russia. Up to 225 Canadians will soon form part of an international group giving basic military training to Ukrainians with little or no military experience. Our Redmond Shannon got to see some of that training up close at a military base in England.
Recreating the fog of war, or at least attempting to. These are everyday civilian Ukrainians who have volunteered to fight against Russia's occupation of their country, spending the next few weeks at this military base in England to learn the basics of how to become soldiers.
I want my children, grandchildren will live in free, independent and flourishing country.
This recruit, who goes by the nickname Zakhar, says his motivations are deeply personal as well as patriotic.
My friend was killed in Odessa. That's why it's also my aim to revenge for him, because we know that a lot of common, unguilty people are dying under the bombardments.
The aim, at least initially, is to give 10,000 Ukrainians basic military training over the coming months.
I mean, it's been humbling, absolutely. They are really motivated, all of them. I've not seen one yet who's put his hand up and went, no, I don't want to do this. Their will to win is fantastic.
Within weeks, Canadian forces will join the British as trainers here, part of an international alliance of this UK-led training programme. Up to 225 soldiers from Canada for a 4-month commitment. Most from the 3rd Battalion of Princess Patricia's Canadian Light Infantry in Edmonton. Some are already here and getting ready to start.
It's a pretty profound thing when you think about it. So what it means for us is it's really important to deliver hard, realistic training for the short time we have them, and I guess prepare them for what lies ahead.
This will be a resumption of Canada's Operation Unifier training mission, but now with much higher stakes. It was paused when Russia invaded Ukraine in February. Over the previous 7 years, Canadian forces had instructed 33,000 Ukrainian soldiers and security personnel. Canadian Special Forces are also on the ground in Ukraine, conducting training exercises there too. Redmond Shannon, Global News in the southeast of England.
1 month after Russia announced it would be pulling its support of the International Space Station, a model of the country's planned replacement has been unveiled. Russia says it will quit the ISS at the end of 2024 in favor of its own orbital station. Russian state media says the first component for the new station could be launched as early as 2025 and completed by 2035. More raging wildfires in Europe. Ahead, the inferno in Spain forcing hundreds to flee. More than 1,200 families have been forced from their homes due to a trio of fierce and fast-moving wildfires in Spain. Gusty winds and difficult terrain is making for challenging firefighting conditions, forcing crews to rely on planes and helicopters to attack the flames. Drought and long stretches of extreme temperatures have made 2022 the worst fire year of the century, with Spain recording 43 major fires so far, 4 times the number last year. Kenya's Deputy President William Ruto has won the country's fiercely contested presidential election. These were the chaotic scenes inside the main tallying center as the result was announced. Ruto narrowly beat his main opponent, veteran opposition leader Raila Odinga. 4 of the 7 members of the Electoral Commission rejected the result, claiming the vote was rigged. Violent protests erupted and police fired tear gas to disperse the crowd of Odinga supporters. Now Kenyans are waiting to see if Odinga will contest the election results. At least 18 children are among dozens killed when an electrical fire swept through a packed Coptic church in Egypt on Sunday. Funerals are being held for the victims. The children were aged 3 to 16. Thousands of people were attending Mass at the time. Officials say most of the deaths and injuries were caused by smoke inhalation, but the panic also triggered a stampede. It's believed the fire started on the 2nd floor when an air conditioner malfunctioned. Building repairs are now underway. Next, a family who raised millions to find a miracle for their son's ultra-rare disease. A few years ago, we first told you about a young Toronto boy with a devastating diagnosis. Michael Pirovalakis suffers from a debilitating neurodegenerative disease so rare, he's believed to be the only child in Canada afflicted with it. Now, for the first time ever, he's undergoing an experimental gene therapy specifically designed for him. That after his family raised millions to make that treatment possible. Karen Lieberman has more.
You hold Mama's hand? Yeah. You're scared that, you're doing something, the wrong thing, that you might harm, this beautiful little boy. But at the same time, you're like, this could change his life.
It still seems like unbelievable. I can't believe we made it to that point.
3 years after Michael Pirovalakis was diagnosed with the ultra-rare condition spastic paraplegia 50, known as SPG 50, he became the first to receive gene therapy with the goal of treating it.
I think there was about 100 scientists involved in this journey.
Michael's parents raised more than $3 million to finance the research and development of a specialized therapy to save their son and potentially find a cure where none currently exists.
First of all, we took out our life savings to start the programs because we couldn't wait. You know, we had beer stands, beer markets, galas, soccer tournaments, little kids doing lemonade stands on the side of the street.
In March, after successful testing in animals and Health Canada approval, the moment they'd worked tirelessly toward. A team at Toronto's Sick Kids Hospital delivered the individualized gene therapy in a single patient trial to Michael.
And the idea behind gene therapy is you basically replace the gene so that now this missing protein can be made. And the idea being, well, hopefully that should now either halt whatever is happening with the disease and maybe even reverse things.
Beyond helping Michael and others with rare conditions, doctors believe this could be a springboard to develop treatments for more common conditions.
You can apply the same principles from fundamental discovery to the development of the drug to give to the patient across the continuum of disease.
Focus, he's watching your feet.
Michael now undergoes daily therapy while his family waits to see if the treatment will work.
So no one really knows. It's uncharted territory. You know, all we're trying to do is give him just a better life.
Oh my God. And although for Michael it may just be a treatment, for the newer generation it will be a cure, right? And so it's just like an amazing feeling to know we're helping other people too.
Karen Lieberman, Global News, Toronto.
That is it for Global National for this Monday night. I'm Farah Nasser, and on behalf of our whole team here at Global National, I want to thank you so much for spending part of your evening with us. Tonight's Your Canada is the city of Niagara Falls, Ontario. We love seeing Your Canada, so please keep emailing us those photos to viewers@globalnational.com. Until tomorrow, take care of yourselves and each other. Good night.